everyone today to our session here on FirstEditing, our featured authors. Today we're with Andrew Appleby, who is telling us about his newest book here that is just published and launching now, called Skara. And we would love to have a little talk with you today, Andrew. Welcome.
Certainly. Thank you.
We're so excited. We want to learn about all of your secrets and insights into how you published your book, and we would love to get started with that. So if you could just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you connect with other authors, that would be great.
I studied archaeology from about the age of 11, and my book is set in the Stone Age, about 3,500 BC. So it's quite a long while ago, and but having done lots of excavations and also experimented making pottery, making flint implements, and building things and making wattle and daub, and I've done a lot of research into pottery work. This brings you far closer to the people that I wanted to write about, and I'd always wanted, got in my head for maybe 35 years, a story about our Orkney Islands and the people here and how strong and powerful and educated they were and sophisticated. And also I felt that Orkney was of world importance at that time. And people have thought, oh, Orkney, it's way up, it's isolated. But I felt that no, there were sparks of travel coming from here and intellect, because we've got wonderful Neolithic stone circles, barrows. We've got a Neolithic city being excavated now called the Ness of Brodgar, and I call that Borbrig in my book. Well, that comes later on. But basically, Skara Brae, the Neolithic village, was lost in a tsunami, probably just at the cusp of the Neolithic and the Bronze Age. But there were people living here well before then, in the Mesolithic days, 8,000–9,000 years before Christ. And so, and there's also an enigmatic tomb called the Tomb of the Eagles, which has been excavated in South Ronaldsay, and I knew very well the archaeologist and farmer who dug it, and I became personally involved, not in the excavation, but with him and the finds, but then I used that site as my inspiration for the first passages, it's of a little girl just splashing along the beach, and the red shanks are darting about in the water's edge, and they commune with them, because I know small children can commune with things much better than maybe adults, and so they became her little familiars, and it deals with her growing up but going through the tales and the legends and the histories in their precinct outside the big tomb. Because what I've done is I've turned these tombs not just into burial places, but places of outdoor celebration areas, all sorts of things, and a lot of activity going on there, and places of learning as well. You know, you go into a church, people go into a church and walk around it and do all manner of things in there, but they don't think that church is actually full of dead bodies, and people think it's strange to go into tombs and do things, but we're doing that all the time. Anyway, I'd got this story in my mind of Orkney, and I realized from some of the bone remains that there was a lot of inbreeding going on, and Charlotte, as she grew up, that Charlotte's the heroine, was aware of this, just as everybody else was, and they could not get fresh new people to the islands. But she has a dream about geese and migrating geese, and they're going somewhere and they come back somewhere, and she has dreams of them flying in the formation of a man. And there's her old there's the old hag Ras in the, it's a great name, Ras. It's a powerful little fish, lives in the rocks, and but she'd also had these similar dreams when she was young, and a man did arrive, a man called Weir, but he didn't survive. It was a tragic story, but Ras comes out with all this, and these two characters really help to form each other. And then, but they know someone is coming from the far distance, and that distance is actually Canada. It's a long way from Orkney. But the hero, Wa, a young Canadian, he also really of the Mesolithic culture. He starts to travel along the Arctic Rim after a series of adventures, some disastrous with his brothers. But he travels along the Arctic Rim towards Orkney. Now, my first book stops where he has left his brothers and gone on his own. And he is actually still following this character, Weir. And that's where the first book ends. And the second book will, this is the first book, that one, Skara.
Yeah.
And this is what I spent 11 years writing. And I obviously thought about publication. So I tried many ways, and yes, very interested, but it's not quite our thing. Lovely, wish you luck, da 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 da. But I'm a man of deadlines. And I thought, right, if this book is not published, taken up by a publisher within a certain date, I'm doing it myself. So I did. And the way it happened was very fortunate. A friend of mine, Miriam Basta, was having a book edited and by a lovely lady called Alison Williamson. And she said Alison wants really to edit a novel, because Miriam writes sort of scientific books, and this is what Alison had always been doing. So Alison took up the challenge of my book and edited it, copy edited it, and had a lot of fun and helped me bring out the first volume, which was actually quite thick, like this. So this is why I'm having two small ones. But I got it on my website, which is www.scarabooks.com, and so I've had sales through that. But I've sold nearly 4,000 copies in the last 2.5 years, and I think that's not bad. I've not.
Oh, that's great.
I've not got into big shops yet, but But now I've got a thinner book, which is more handleable, and I know that visitors coming to Orkney can't take away a thick book on the airplane. So this is why I brought out it in two now, and it's such fun that I've written a third, which has been edited by FirstEditing. I've found your company so good, because Alison did the first one, but then I went to you, and so you've done one, you've done two, which is, this one comes out tomorrow officially. The number 2 comes out on the Ides of March, and number 3 comes out midsummer, and number 4, which I'm halfway through, will appear on the shelves just before Christmas next year. So I'm a very disorganized person, so I have to have a plan and dates. Otherwise, I will just fail and go under. But my wife Sigrid and I, we went to Greece for a good long break, but that was really a research trip, because I'm taking my hero and heroine, and by then their 2 children, which are twins, Solange and Solan, that's their names. Solan is goose, a word for goose, and Solange is a female goose, and then because Wa is of the goose clan, and he is very connected the geese, hence the dreams of the migrations. But they go to Belgium, down the east coast of Scotland. The current takes you to Belgium, and then they will go up rivers to Switzerland, and then along Lake Lucerne, and then down a river system to the Mediterranean, where they will travel along the Mediterranean, meeting various clans, groups of people, again in the middle to late Neolithic. Well, it's the late Neolithic there. It's coming towards the cusp of the Bronze Age. But what they'll be doing is altering and laying patterns of civilization, and not knowing that they're actually doing that, but that's what they're doing. And but then they'll return to Orkney. But that's a précis of the whole. It's going to be a series of 5 books, and so I'm working hard on it.
Fantastic.
3 to 5 in the morning is my best time for writing.
Wow.
I wake up because I've been dreaming and thinking, and then I get up and I take my computer away into a room where I can't get emails. And we've got a little 18th century house, and there's a wee room behind thick stone walls which I go up into, and I can sit there in solace and scribe.
Wow.
And it's lovely to do.
Andrew, if you could tell us a little bit about, I mean, you've told us about the book and all of your dreams and ideas and the research you put into it. What was your ultimate goal here? I mean, you wanted to publish it. Was it to share a story? Have you always dreamed of becoming an author, a published author?
I've always wanted to write. At school, I always wrote essays, and no matter what the subject was, I changed it into archaeology somehow. And so I've just very involved in the past and people. And I think what I wanted to try to do with the book is to put flesh on ancient bones, make them into real people with real feelings, ambitions, desires, jealousies, loves, and all these things that we have now, because they are like us. And I've written the language that they speak like us, because they will have spoken in their own vernacular, which would have been modern to them. So that's what I've done. And also I wanted to show the sheer intellect of the people, and how they were at the forefront of their technologies, like we are with, well, I'm certainly not with computers, as you can see, but children of our time are so adept and manually dexterous. And it took the same sort of manual dexterity to make a flint arrowhead, or to do all the things that they were making string, all the things that they did required these particular skills, which we now use in different ways. So, but my idea obviously was to publish. And when I started writing, I thought, this is film. And so because the first chapter is full of, it's full of performance and music and stories and dance and laughter and emotion. And I thought, gosh, this would translate into film. And the day after it was published, actually, a lady came into the pottery, and she was a composer, Sally Lamb McCune from New York State. And she said, Andrew, will your novel translate into an opera? And I said, well, of course, yes. And she said, well, I'm a composer. Would you mind if I did an opera of it? I'll take it away. And she read, and she came back and said, I've been composing all night. So wow. That was amazing. And the opera that is being done, we've got a girl here locally who's a brilliant librettist, and she did some poetry about one of my discoveries some years ago, and I thought, well, she's ideal for that. She doesn't want her name mentioned, so I'll not do that, but her words are so sympathetic, and with Sally they've got on tremendously well. I love the music. My wife loves the music. She was away, and it was her birthday. She was in Denmark, and I received some clips of this music, and I emailed it to her, and it happened to be her birthday, and she just could not believe the quality of it. It was staggering, and particularly the piece where Wa enters. But anyway, they now have a dramatist, so it's caused them to really look at it, because these two, they've written and worked together, but that's just two people. So they've now got a dramatist who's pretty marvelous, and Corrie is her name, but she's seen it from the outside and looked in. So they've all been rewriting and things, but they're very, very happy. But I've re-edited 5, 6, 7 times, I can tell you, and one needs to go through and go through and go through and prune, bring sentences together, all manner of things. And so this is what's been happening with the opera. And my good friend John Welburn, he was, as we said, oh yes, this is film. He had a good look around, contacts of his, and he has somebody, Chelsea Grant from Kiwi Films, interested now to make a feature film. So I'm hoping that that does come off. There's obviously money to raise for the development of it, and I think I've got all this because I totally believed in what I was doing. I was dogged, determined. I went on and on and on, and wrote and edited and all the things that you have to do. And a writer told me once, you have to edit 7 times, and I believe him. And the 7th time is such a pleasure, going through, and you see the paragraphs and people's thoughts taking shape. And it's lovely to do. I like editing. Writing is great. As I say, I write between 3 and 5 in the mornings most of the time, and that is creative, and I'm on my own, and no interruptions, and the people gather around me, the characters, and they do the strangest of things. I've got a plan, and my God, it doesn't go according to that plan, because the characters know that actually that can't happen that way. It's got to happen this way, and they do it. And I've been struck, and one point, I couldn't believe the tragedy that happened. And I was writing this thing, and it's like it wasn't me writing; it was the character writing, and it was a very emotional moment. And so, sometimes I think a writer is more of a paintbrush in somebody else's hands. And when that happens, I think you must just carry on being the paintbrush and see what happens on your canvas, which is my computer screen. And before I started writing, I could barely use a computer. I can't do much of it now, but I know how to do the writing, but all the twiddly bits like Skype, as you've seen, haven't been quite so easy. But we've got there. Potters are determined characters. And also, when I'm potting and throwing pots, you see, sometimes I've got clay weighed up behind there, which you can't see. There's 180 balls of clay, and I will make 180 mugs. I do 1 a minute. But if you think about what you're doing in pottery, you're not doing it right. Often you must just be there doing the actions all the same, cutting the pot off, putting it to one side, and all the time my brain is going round and round and round, developing a storyline or a character, or thinking back and thinking, well, actually, it'll be another sort of pot. So I go back and write in the right little pot or vessel or implement that they're using. And so all the time when I'm working, there's this going on in the background. So it's a very nice thing to do.
It sounds incredible. It sounds like a real creative endeavor there.
Well, Orkney is an incredibly creative place, and I think this is why it was so rich in the Stone Age, because there is a power here, and if people come to Orkney, they'll feel that power, the creativeness, and a lot of people will just want to come back, which is what happened to me. I came here first when I was 15, and then I finally moved by the time I was 26. So that was 11 years of having to come back and leave, and then come back and finally stay to write and pot.
Do you have any recommendations for tools for other authors to help them with their publishing?
Determination. Never be put down. And if you have to self-publish, do it. But then what you need to do, once you've got your book published, you can go out and sell that physically. And my first order was 600 books, and I sold those myself, some through local bookshops, which was good. And by doing that, you get known. And I've been to the London Book Fair. I went there and I made contacts which might be useful at some time. I've got the whole of the story in my head, but then, and I know where it's going to start, I know where it's going to finish. It's getting to these places in reasonable stages, which is interesting. But with the plan now for selling, my book is now written in Scotland, or Orkney. It's designed in Scotland and it's printed in Scotland. So I'm hoping to get to, there's a Scottish book group who go to the London Book Fair, and I want to go to that because I would like to get a publisher who can publish abroad for me. I want a Canadian publisher, I want a US publisher, I want one in Poland because they're great readers. There's been interest in it from Spain, but I can't handle all this publishing on my own. So I've got to go out and find these people, and I think that I can't do it the traditional way of sending off manuscripts and hoping. I've got to do it by example, and the example is that it's going to be a good seller, and we'll have a film, and there's an opera there, and but I think that's because I've put my toe out into the cold water and found it's quite warm. But you just have to work on the marketing, and you've got to throw all what is it, embarrassment aside. You've got to. It's difficult. I mean, I find it difficult every day selling something. I have to actually become a slightly different person and put my foot over that threshold, and that toe there is somebody else, and my leg and the rest of my body follows through, and I have to become another person, and I'm within there, and sell my book with or whatever I'm doing with faith and honesty, and without trying to look embarrassed, and it seems to work. So yeah, I'm planning, and I'm going to go on a sales trip with my book actually next week. I'm going to see my grandchildren, and we're going to see the Nutcracker with Scottish Ballet. But that means that I'll be in Edinburgh, and there's a few bookshops there, so I will be going in those. And every opportunity, wherever I am, I make a point of taking books with me and saying, here I am, I'm Andrew Appleby, da 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 da. And I've been to Waterston's, and I always get turned away nicely from Waterston's. They say, oh, well, see the chief buyer, and I contact the chief buyer, and they say, well, yes, we already know about you. But the more I go on and on and on and on, the more I'm sure it'll get there. And that's what you have to do.
That's great. Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really great. So is there anything you wish you'd done differently or avoided in this process that you could tell other...
I wished I'd started I wished I'd started years before. I had the book in my head, as I say, 35 years ago, and I wished I'd started then. But life wouldn't let me. I was a young dad and children to brought up and running the pottery. But I used to write letters to the paper and have fun, and people would laugh at them. You know, just a few words, but very succinct and cause a big laugh. And then I wrote a few more serious things. And then I did a series. I knew I'd got the big book, so I wrote for the local paper a series of monthly articles, and we published those. That's Now and Then Notes, and that's got articles about eels, gizzards, turkey's feet, all manner of strange, weird things that I know quite a lot about. And are interested in. There was the first one is snot, and it's all about cold cures, because I had a cold, and I said to the editor, it was a new paper, Orkney Today, and I said to the editor, right, I've got stacks of stories, I'll just write them out now and then, and you'll publish them. He said, what will we call them? I said, well, we'll call them Now and Then Notes, and it'll be a nice read for somebody or for people, and they proved very popular, so it was good fun. But that was because I needed to practice. So if you've got I felt I've got a big book, but I need to practice writing stories and getting into the rhythm of it. So that's what I did, and we brought that one out. And there's a lot of things in that. There's the thing about Neolithic pottery and great orcs, because we found, my wife noticed on some prehistoric pottery, and it had never been noticed before, figures of great orcs. It was just the head, and this was pottery from Skara Brae. So we've made the great orc into one of the totem birds there, because it was obviously very important. And so there's an article about that in there, which has influenced Skara. So I think the thing, if you want to write a book, write. Whether it's that book or something else, write and get it published, even if it's just a letter in the paper or a small article about something or whatever it is, but write and get those, because it's like potting and muscle memory. The more you make pots, the more you've got memory in your muscles, the easier it can be. And I think that is the same with writing. And so that's why I started doing that. Deliberate pry.
That's fantastic. Do you have any last final words of advice for somebody who'd like to become a successfully published author just like you?
I don't know that I'm that successful yet, but it'll come. Any final words? Do it because you love it. And if you love what you're doing, then you can put that forward and people will feel that love from you in your writing. And you're being honest in a way, and you're sloughing off. If you're writing about something else, you're often writing about yourself too. So you've just got to bare your heart, and then you'll then I think you'll be recognized. So that's what I do. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in today and giving us a little bit of insight into your book and your publishing and your journey and your research, and inspiring other authors to just write. Just write. And I think that's as simple as we can make it. And
I think people just need to hear that again and be inspired. Thank you so much. Congratulations. We look forward to all of your many books. Yes.
Yeah, don't forget www.scarabooks.com.
Absolutely. Check it out on your page, and I encourage everyone to check this out. It's a great little bit of history, and join us there. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.